Okay, this evening I have the pleasure to welcome Kristina Maurer. She's a digital expert who is currently working with the Vienna Business Agency. She works between technical innovation with a focus of human-centered innovation. She used to head the Ars Electronica, head of European projects, and today she will talk to us about human-centered innovation in communities and the digital realm. Thank you. Take it away.
Thank you. I have my, I'm all mic'd up. Thank you very much, Rüdiger, for the introduction. And thanks to the team at Subnet also for having me tonight and for the great organization. So I wanted to talk today about how like a human-centered approach to digital technology manifests itself in the communities that I've worked with. So I came up with a bit of a clunky title for the presentation, but that's basically what I want to speak about today. I'm a cultural producer, a storyteller, and currently also technology expert and researcher. And my background is in cultural studies and in media culture and art theory. So I studied at the University of Art in Linz. And that's where I did my MA. And I've worked in terms of production. I've worked in digital and physical workshops. I've produced a lot of exhibitions, digital acceleration and incubation programs for artists and creatives, and also all kinds of different conferences and talks and so on. And I'm super passionate about digital culture and digital transformation and also human-centered digital technologies. The reason why I'm super passionate about this is basically through gaming. So I became interested in digital culture as a very young person, and somehow it ended up also becoming a main part of my job in the end. And I did a bit of a detour first through more traditional contemporary art. So I worked in Vienna in an art space there also. And then through spending some time in Bristol in the UK at the university there, and also in kind of institutions like Watershed and the Pervasive Media Studio in Bristol that are focused very much on digital technologies and on human-computer interaction and so on. I kind of realized that I'm much more interested in sort of the digital realm and artists who were working with digital technologies and creatives working in that space. So I kind of transitioned from contemporary art more towards art production that uses digital technologies in some way. And I'm definitely, besides kind of on a research level, being interested in human-centered innovation and digitalization and so on, I'm also on an artistic and creative level very interested in those kind of big sensory experiences like the one you see on the very right. So yeah, in my job I work more on the research layer, but like in artistic practice and in creative practice I'm also interested in sensory experiences. So today I wanted basically to focus on the human-centered aspect of digital technologies because I think there is a communities focus at the moment at Subnet. And I've worked in several communities that are kind of building around thinking about digital technology from the point of view of the human at the center. And so I wanted to focus on that. And for me personally, when I think about the term human-centered, I'm thinking on the one hand about how we design, program, distribute, and implement digital technologies. What kind of resources are needed to produce them, the impact on the environment, so kind of the whole chain of that. And also, of course, the societal impact, like in what areas they are being applied, how they are being applied, are there any kind of hidden implications that the users are not aware of? I'm also interested in kind of digital literacy. So I've worked in European projects focused on digital literacy and digital production in museums. Yeah, so that's kind of my point of view when I'm talking about human-centered digital technologies. I spent quite a few years at Ars Electronica, and I think that's also where this interest basically stems from. So I got some inputs already from Bristol, from Watershed, from Pervasive Media Studio, but then afterwards I worked for many years at the Ars Electronica Festival and also as a producer for the Ars Electronica Center. And there I really got into this intersection of art and digital technologies, and also kind of which kind of issues, which impacts of digital technologies artists are highlighting in their work. And I also spent a lot of time on these topics working together with communities, specifically in European cooperation projects. So there were always kind of big EU-wide projects where kind of everybody was working towards this focus of how is technology applied in a human-centered way through their artistic practice, and kind of also reflecting critical issues and so on. And more recently, I've moved a bit away from the creative production side of things, the cultural production, cultural management side of things, and joined the Vienna Business Agency in the digital technologies team. And I'm responsible there for working with companies, specifically around the topics of sustainability in the digital realm, digital humanism and data ecosystems. So kind of thinking about digital technologies and their impact on humans is part of my professional practice since at least 10 years. In addition to that, together with friends, I also founded a Verein last year that you would be welcome to check out, and there we are focusing more on also on digital art and media arts, but more on the sensory and audiovisual experiences. So that's the Verein Sirup, and we are based in Linz. So that's kind of the reason of why I think about human-centered digital technologies a lot. So something that connects my work at Ars Electronica and also now at the Vienna Business Agency is basically the exploration of the impact of digital technologies and its anchor in kind of a human-centered approach. And I found that both in my prior practice and in my professional practice now, that there are communities that are very passionate about this topic, so that kind of tackle human-centered digital technologies in different ways, but they're working together and they're working kind of, in a very focused way on these topics. So I saw some connections also between kind of working with artists, but also now with companies, with the Vienna Business Agency. And I think the how I got really into this topic from the artistic practice point of view was really through artists or collectives like Forensic Architecture, who work a lot with data visualization and at the intersection of architecture to highlight big societal issues through exploring artworks like the one you can see here, In Event of Moon Disaster by Halsey Burgund and Francesca Panetta, where they wanted to kind of show how deepfakes are being created and also create a platform of to foster media literacy around these topics. So it was really through the artworks and the artists that I got interested in this topic, and how I kind of started working in this area also in my professional practice. And in terms of practically working with these communities, what I'm interested in is really critical understanding of the implications of digital technology. Then basically the question of how to mediate an approach, into how to design digital technologies, how to program them, and so on. So basic thinking about the ways of how to mediate this with different kind of technologies. Because obviously you can work with artists and creatives and kind of work with art to think about the implications of data privacy together with school children, or you can work also with researchers and scientists in the context of IT companies and think about, in terms of software engineering, what kind of methods there are to program software with human in mind, with data privacy in mind, with cybersecurity in mind, and so on. So I'm always interested in kind of mediating these topics to different kind of groups, because I think it always needs a different kind of way of storytelling and talking to people when working on this. So I worked with both of the communities. I've spent a lot of time working on human-centered digital technologies. There came up the concept of digital humanism. So within Ars Electronica and within the European corporations there, the moniker of digital humanism was used to think about basically, could digital applications be more oriented towards human needs and based on cultural values that respect the autonomy of users over their data? Could software solutions build on the values of cultural diversity instead of infrastructural uniformity? Could digital tools be increasingly of benefit in cross-cultural collaboration, international cultural relations, and mutual understanding? So this was kind of the lens through which European cooperation projects working with artists looked at this topic at Ars Electronica. And the city of Vienna, who I'm collaborating and working with very closely now through the Vienna Business Agency, kind of settled also on applying this term of digital humanism to many of its agendas, to the digital agenda, to the innovation agenda, and so on, in 2019. And what the Vienna Manifesto on Digital Humanism mentions is, like all technologies, digital technologies do not emerge from nowhere. They are shaped by implicit and explicit choices and incorporate a set of values, norms, interests, assumptions, how the world around us is or should be. Many of these choices remain hidden in the software programs implementing algorithms that remain invisible. We must shape technologies in accordance with human values and needs, instead of allowing technologies to shape humans. Our task is not only to rein in the downsides of information and communication technologies, but to encourage human-centered innovation. So for me, it was kind of interesting that I've worked with two different communities now that kind of use this term to reflect their own practice and the practice of the artists working within the platform of the European platform of digital humanism, or now in Vienna, that kind of the public sector and the city government has decided to use this term of human-centered digital technologies really strongly in strategy, and kind of wants to implement this also from the education sector to arts and culture to work to the economic sector also. And I'm interested now in kind of exploring how those different communities come to different outputs and solutions working around this topic. And I was also interested in kind of seeing that also in Vienna, there's quite a strong community around this topic. So there's now quite a lot of passionate engineers, also networks, practitioners who are really interested in potentially working with other companies. For example, companies using AI models to make their software and the algorithms they are using more human-centric and so on. So I was interested in what kind of a strong community has been built around this topic. And I also saw this connection in the communication by both of these communities, with a focus on the impact of technology that is central to empowering individuals, so to kind of, in different ways, ensure that the general public becomes more literate, digital literate, more media literate, more literate about AI, for example. And both of these communities are always also focusing on the responsibility of the producers and the designers and the multipliers of who are implementing these technologies. And I basically want to, in the last part for today, I want to share a few of the projects that I've come across and how those different communities coming from the artistic area and now coming more from the community in Vienna are tackling these topics. So in terms of, for example, societal impact through the human-centered application of digital technologies, the Data Detox Kit by Tactical Tech, which is a collective based in Berlin, wants to give agency back to the users, and again wants to foster media literacy and data literacy. And they kind of want to give the know-how to people who are using the Data Detox Kit to kind of know how they can control their technology, how they can control security, preferences, privacy settings, and so on, and to ensure that the technology doesn't lead to less well-being for the people who are using it. They also want to kind of trigger thoughts through their workshops and through the Data Detox Kit that is available as a toolkit, but also as a web platform, about how you can take better care of your devices in terms of sustainability, how you can kind of clear your digital footprint, and they're also kind of highlighting design tricks that software producers and producers of the devices are using to kind of make you keep you reaching towards your digital devices and so on. In contrast, there's, for example, an application now from a very young company in Vienna that wants to, so the app is dedicated basically to translating documents that are somehow difficult to understand on a bureaucratic level, because they're using difficult language and so on, and allows you through this app to kind of break down the text and makes it usable and understandable for migrants and immigrants and expats and so on. So the two founders, they really want to focus on accessibility and ensure that the documents you upload there are safely stored in a vault and so on. And they're also really focusing on the responsibility in terms of the AI models they are using. So they recently switched from OpenAI to an EU-based provider of AI models. So I'm interested to see that there is kind of a community arising in Vienna of companies and so on, and of young founders who are kind of have this mindset of developing human-centered technologies already in their practice. similar to what I've seen over many years from the artists participating in the media art scene, the digital culture scene, and the community of Ars Electronica. I was also very interested recently to hear about the project Fair by Design. So that's also a research project where a consortium of 6 companies and universities are working together on a methodology for fair artificial intelligence development. And they're really aiming to avoid the unintentional biases and discrimination within AI models. So they really want to equip other companies, engineers, programmers and so on to develop AI models that do not have internal biases and so on, that are based on data sets that don't exclude certain people. And they're developing this now for 5 use cases in a way. And I heard an echo there of the project Algorithmic Justice League, which is by an MIT researcher called Joy Bolamwini, that she launched, I think maybe even 7 or 8 years ago by now, where she also kind of wants to raise awareness about the impacts of AI. And she's also kind of highlighting how AI tech disproportionately negatively affects communities that are not represented in the data sets used to train AI models. And whereas Fair by Design really aims to work with companies and so on to kind of engender this human-centered approach, the Algorithmic Justice League is also an art project, and they also show their research and their artistic practice in the arts and cultural sector, basically. So I'm kind of interested also in seeing how those topics that I feel the cultural sector that I was present in was tackling for many years are now also very present in kind of the programming and engineering community. So I'm interested in seeing those echoes in a way and seeing how those different communities are now tackling those topics. And last but not least, I wanted to share some applications of data in artistic practice as well as in an innovation lab in Vienna. So basically their satellite data and other kind of data sets are being used to being applied in the public sector. So with the Vienna Geospace Hub, which was launched also through an FFG project by the Urban Innovation Agency in Vienna, satellite data is going to be used to kind of address climate change in cities. So basically geodata and AI will be used to address problems in public space, like collecting data about water temperature, about soil moisture, in general development of the climate in urban areas, but also all sorts of ecological topics, like basically monitoring tops of trees and so on. So they want to build an innovation lab in a way in Vienna that brings together the public sector and brings together public sector, the data, as well as the companies that can actually build applications around this. And this for me again reminded me of a project called Oceans in Transformation by Territorial Agency, which is basically an artistic duo based in London and in Europe who come from a background of urban studies and of architecture, and who are building these really kind of sprawling research and artistic projects where they are kind of tracking through the use of open data also the status of our oceans and kind of the issues that are arising, ecological issues and so on. So I'm interested there also in how those different communities are thinking about satellite data and the application of satellite data, and which kind of open data they can use to kind of highlight larger societal problems and impact and so on. So I was kind of interested in tracking a little bit the themes and topics those different communities are tackling and how they are tackling them. And I would like to end on a project that I did last year with two friends of mine, Carla Spilottini and Laura Welzenbach, where we are also aiming to discuss with others through a workshop format the implications and the impact of digital technologies. But we also tried to take a bit more of a humoristic approach, maybe you could say. Like we used a toolkit by Superflux, a tarot for the new normal, which kind of gives a different spin to tarot cards. So you have different kind of cards like the activist, the visionary, the collapse, the rogue state, the market, and so on. And we use those to kind of spin stories with the workshop participants at last year's Schmiede to kind of get them thinking about the implications of digital technologies and how we want to design and program and implement technologies. So it's more of a creative approach that we wanted to explore there. And again, it was great that we could kind of trial run it with the community at Schmiede and to kind of create the first stories with them through this workshop format. Yeah, so that was my current thoughts on communities working in the area of human-centered digital technologies. Thank you very much for your attention, and if you like, come visit us at Syrup in Linz.
Thank you very much. I think you raised many questions, so I would like to ask around if anyone has questions as of now. Do you have? Please. It's always better if you start than me.
Thank you, Kristina. My question would be, since you mentioned all these different communities, my experience is sometimes that especially artists and commercial companies also don't have too many connections, and the examples that you were talking about told a different story. So why is it working in Vienna to bring together all these different groups of people?
I think that there isn't necessarily, there are also I think communities in Vienna that are much more closely related to the crowd of Ars Electronica or Schmiede also. Within the communities I'm working in, there's not necessarily artists or creatives involved, but I think there are a lot of social scientists and people with a background in the humanities involved. And I think there is quite a strong commitment from the city of Vienna to build this community. And I found that very interesting, that somehow this is also reflected maybe in the ideas of young people who are currently creating apps and software and so on.
May I follow up on this one? One thing which you highlighted during your talk is the communities. And from my point, the first time I really saw a paradox actually appearing. And the paradox is that the community, to a certain extent, is a filter. And to a certain extent, if you try to make a community accessible through technology, I kind of eradicate the filter. So basically worse than the new filter coming in, because normally a community has to do with identity. And I belong to a certain group of people. I have the tendency to be similarly minded. But now when we talk about this, you basically say you have a community of producers, they produce technology, and by this you create a new community.
I don't think I'm quite getting the question.
Okay. No, it's basically that you're creating a new community through technology, but at the same time, the community, in its definition, from my understanding, is to a certain extent exclusive. So therefore, if you're opening up this exclusiveness, it kind of undermines the community which is producing it. Or is it just too much of a headache question?
No. I think I got it now.
I've never seen myself this problem.
You mean that if the borders of the community become kind of very
fuzzy,
then the output also becomes.
No, the identity gets lost. The
identity gets lost. I would agree to that. I think now, for example, in Vienna, it's not a massive community, so it's quite a group of people together, really focused on a topic. But I can definitely see, as soon as the community grows and maybe starts to become displaced, you also kind of lose the momentum of this shared whatever you are working on. Can be a technology, can be like any shared interest. At the same time, I see the conundrum. I wonder how we can tackle it, because I definitely think there is a need to foster thinking about this in a broad way. But I don't think I have a straight answer.
I'm a little confused myself there, but I think one easy approach is probably if you differentiate between users and producers.
Yeah.
But still, it's kind of.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Thank you.
I agree.
Any other questions? I have a few.
Okay.
I mean, in Vienna, of course. I mean, if you talked about that, the community of Ars Electronica is in Vienna. You have Schmiede community in Vienna. You have Vienna is a city which 2 million people. So, and then this is one question which has been haunting me ever since I've been doing Schmiede. It's the question of critical mass, and to what extent critical mass is actually the only factor which is relevant, because if you have people who have different life stages, who have whatever happening to them, to what extent do you think actually in your work that critical mass is getting less relevant with technology or more relevant?
I think it's getting in a way more relevant because of the amount of people who are implementing technologies and working with them and experimenting with them and so on. So I think the speed at which it spreads is extremely fast. So I think critical mass is important. But it doesn't necessarily always align with the community thought.
Which brings me to the next one, which is basically when you have innovation, and innovation is moving fast, how can that be human-centered? Because actually, if the speed, I mean, I'm not sure. Maybe I'm coming to an age where things are moving too fast for my taste, and I just see it. And especially with now the new AI element to it, to what extent are you really able to keep up the new hacks and like how? I mean, sorry, I make it simpler. When we first started using the internet in the late 90s. we were promised so many things. Yeah, and I would say the internet, which we were promised in the 90s, appeared in 2010. Or 2012, around there, yeah. And so now we are in a kind of testing phase. Yeah. Which is very painful.
Yeah.
Because a lot of things you start getting used to actually disappear.
Because it's a sandbox, and things get lost in the sandbox.
And especially see with their community solutions, like with Facebook, MySpace, whatever you always had, like how many communities you went through until you're still here.
I think I want to start. I think you mentioned something at the beginning of the question.
I think it was about speed and human-centered.
Speed and human-centered.
How can you put those two things together?
Yeah, I mean, I think in a way they don't fit together at all. I think there are, as for example, this Fair by Design research project. I think there are ways when you develop methodologies that help people kind of, where you implement fail-safes and you offer this to people and they can use it in whatever they are developing. I think that can be helpful. At the same time, it requires you to slow down the process in a way. So I think the question is, can you get a critical mass of people together who you can convince of the fact that it's good to slow innovation down to a certain degree, and that in turn allows you to focus more on creating things that humans need and creating things in ways that are good for the people using them. And I think, of course, this is at odds with capitalist society in a way. The point I wanted to make is that there is like a big element of idealism, I'm sure, in all of these approaches at the end of the day.
Thank you. Any questions? No?
What do you think, when you talk about human-centered, are really the big challenges to make technology more human-centered? I mean, human-centered in a neutral way just means, okay, I'm a user, a phone should help me. But I think as a human society, we have so many actual current problems.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you think technology can really help the problems, and what are the problems that technology will solve, like in terms of make it more democratized or help us with make the world more equal? I don't see how technology can really do this. I mean, there could be, but is this really what you're talking about when you talk about human-centered?
I mean, I think at this point, digital technologies are so ingrained with basically our everyday lives that I'm not sure if I definitely don't think digital technology will save us. I think I think the question is, now that it's there, and in a way, it's also kind of, in many ways, got away from us in terms of how much resources it uses, in terms of energy consumption, in terms of Rohstoffe, resources that are needed, in terms of what happens when you stop using it and so on. I think the question is now at this point, how can we somehow rein it? Which ways can we use to rein it in to ensure that it's not getting away from us even more in a way? So how can we design it? For example, how can we avoid things to happen like what OpenAI did with its AI models, that it simply used a gigantic amount of data available on the internet, all kinds of pictures, texts, and so on to train their AI models. So I think maybe communities can aid a little bit in that, in developing methodologies and in kind of reminding us and pulling us back. I don't know, I don't think I quite answered your question, but...
No, but I mean, you started with resources and power consumption.
Yeah.
I think these are two good topics to start with, but is this everything the community talks about, or where?
No, I mean it also talks about kind of in terms of how you design software, so which kind of data is collected from users and so on. So it talks about privacy, of course. It talks about also accessibility, so digital accessibility, Barrierefreiheit, and so on. It also considers how different communities are maybe excluded from the way that technology is designed, so how to make it more inclusive, and so on. So it's definitely just not the resources and sustainability topic, but the design, privacy, security, who's using it, how they are using it, and so on, how we design them, visual design, and so on.
Any questions, please?
Hi, thanks for your talk. So this may be a little bit out of scope out of what you were doing, but what I'm curious about is a little bit about the divide between kind of the city and the rural digital literacy. Yeah. I'm wondering if kind of the communities that you're working on, are they targeting at all, like kind of what you were just mentioning, right? Like the excluded communities or potentially migrant communities, et cetera. And I know you gave at least one example of that, but curious if you can maybe build up on that a little bit.
So I definitely think the topic of the rural versus urban divide is relevant. And I think with the communities that I'm working in now, they are addressing the urban areas, but I'm also kind of participating in kind of rounds where you have people from all over Austria, from different states and so on. And they definitely are aware of the divide there, and they're also saying there's also pushback towards ideas now from the communities I'm working in, because they're saying on the one hand they are missing resources to implement these ideas. They have other issues like the current energy crisis and so on. So I definitely think there's a divide in terms of where those ideas are being generated and if we are currently reaching rural areas with them. So I know that there are programs also from the Austrian government and so on to foster digital literacy all over Austria in a way. But I do see it as a valid critical point that it's very, very focused on urban culture and urban communities.
Any other questions?
Thank you very much for the presentation. And I was just wondering, perhaps it's very speculative, I don't know. But is it possible to speculate that maybe if we move to a more than human design, we can actually create better strategies and mechanisms for those rather anthropocentric point of view?
Yeah, I agree. In terms of more than human, are you thinking about beyond the planetary borders, or more about on Earth kind of?
I think a good start will be staying
on Earth. I think it's very valid, and I definitely think that sometimes those communities talking about human-centric digital technologies definitely don't take into account the more than human approach. So I think they sometimes maybe get lost in discussing how can we design technology even more for humans and so on, while then leaving out this aspect of the more than human. So I definitely think that those communities could profit from maybe getting in creatives and practitioners who have already been thinking about these aspects.
I think we have time for one more question. Is there one more question? Then I would like to finish it. The problem with simplicity, I understand, from my point of view, is that simplicity is humongously complex. And the other problem I've seen after listening to your talk is that actually when you really focus on simplicity, you go towards a solution. Mm-hmm. And the problem with most solutions is that things change. So what I always thought when you talked about was actually that the technology we're designing has in itself the capacity to do the same job over and over again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, true.
The problem we are having is that we are not the same tomorrow.
Yes.
And so by designing a solution for a problem we are facing today, actually doesn't solve anything. I mean, probably the best example is oil. Mm-hmm. we found a really good solution for most of our problems. And now we have a humongous problem. And so, how can you even address that complexity? And it's for me, it's I'm not trying to make fun of.
No.
It's really something. The more I think about solutions, the more I don't understand how to do solutions.
I fully agree. So I definitely, I hope it didn't come across that I was presenting solutions. I'm presenting approaches, but I completely see what you mean, because any kind of solution we develop and any kind of solution which we gather a community around is not the one we need today maybe, but not the one we need tomorrow. But I definitely also have no answer for that. But I appreciate the question.
Thank you for the talk. It was a pleasure having you.
Thank you very much.
And we're going to go to Zegel Pavilion for the factory opening afterwards. If you want to come along, there are a few cars driving this way. Thank you.
Thank you.